Somehow the stars aligned, and last Friday, the 20th anniversary of Evanescence's Fallen album was released, and it's just in time for episode 20 of my album song rank and review series. Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited to dive into this album. It is an absolute classic. The original came out on March 4th, 2003, and it was an instant game changer because it mixed nu metal guitars and song structures with Amy Lee's gothic, operatic vocals that took the world by storm. She has one of the best voices in rock and metal till this day, and I was pretty excited when this was released. Usually, with 20th anniversary releases, I feel like albums start getting overrated. Like, oh, it's been 20 years, this album's amazing. I want to dig into Fallen. Is it really that good? Is it worth the reissue? And what's fun about this release is we get 3 unreleased tracks. So I am going to include those tracks in my ranking. I will start from least best to best and rank these songs. And I was pretty curious about unreleased tracks because most of the time they don't make the album for a reason, right? And then other times there's an unreleased track that you're like, why wasn't this on the album? Like Lost by Linkin Park, for example. Let's see where those 3 songs rank along with the original 11 tracks here, and then I will give the album an overall score. As this ranking goes on, please be sure to comment. Let me know if you agree or disagree as I'm ranking these songs least best to best. Now let's go. First up, yes, we have one of the unreleased songs, and that is Farther Away. I like it. It's upbeat. It's definitely heavy. It just doesn't feel fully baked, so I think this was a good song to leave off of the album. The rest of the 11 tracks on the original release are better. I will applaud. The guitar lines are awesome. It's really centered around just this one riff. Yeah, there's this like dun 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 dun, but we've kind of heard that already. It wouldn't have been remembered in the context of this album. However, if this was released on a new Evanescence album, people would be like, oh, they're going back to their old days. In this case, Evanescence did the right thing by leaving this track off, but I'm happy they've released it. Next, ranked at 13 is actually one of the original 11 songs. So right away we know that a few of these unreleased tracks are actually going to rank better than some of the original stuff. It's a fine song. It starts with this like kind of delicate piano. Then it dives into this straightforward guitar riff, and it's a little generic. It's generic by nu metal standards. It's still fine. It is effective, but it doesn't do enough for me. If it wasn't for Amy Lee, this song would kind of be a throwaway track. Simplicity sometimes does work, but in this case, it's simple but not original. I'll credit the song for being a passionate performance. Amy Lee still gives 100%, and there is a nice crescendo for the final chorus. This one's good, but not great. Ranked 12th is a previous unreleased track, and that is Missing. I really like this one because Amy Lee kind of does this Karina Round type vocal background while she's singing on her own. If you don't know Karina Round, she sings in Pussifer with Maynard James Keenan, and she's often not necessarily singing, but kind of scatting or providing some kind of atmospheric vocal layer that could add a really cool beat. I love when artists use their voice as an instrument, and Amy Lee does that in Missing, so I think that's really cool. It makes it edge out Take Me Over, which was actually originally on the album. Overall, it's a fun tune. I would say it's experimental, it's a little progressive, and I can see producers saying, no, this album has so many standout tracks, we're not getting weird yet. You're too early in your career, but I say get weird. Missing was a great surprise and a really cool addition to the Fallen opus. Next at 11 is Hello, and I feel like this is a song that will fall through the cracks on Fallen in general, and it probably has for the last 20 years, unless you're a diehard fan. It's one of 2 original ballads that was released 20 years ago. You've got no guitars here. This is strictly piano and Amy Lee singing. It's beautiful, it's haunting, as most of her songs are. What I like about Hello is it's a true differentiator from other bands in the early 2000s. You don't hear these gothic piano-driven ballads by anyone else at that time. Amy Lee's songwriting is very visual, it's beautiful, and kind of tragic at the same time. Ton of themes in this album about mental health and struggling with life and death. Hello is no different there. And upon diving deeper into the song, it's really sad because it is about Amy dealing with the tragic loss of her sister when she was just 6 years old. This song is probably really difficult for her to perform, yet she still shines through the darkness of this track. A secret weapon of Evanescence has been Amy Lee's piano playing, and Breathe No More is an awesome example. I believe that of all 3 unreleased tracks, Breathe No More should have been released 20 years ago. There were only 2 ballads on Fallen, so I think it would have been fine to have a third on there. I get what the band was going for. They're going for a very upbeat sound with a few ballads sprinkled in, but Breathe No More is an absolute beauty. Totally piano driven again. I know sometimes strictly piano driven songs might get a little old, but with Amy Lee's voice, it never gets old. These are always delightful treats, and I think it could have added a little air and space to Fallen overall 20 years ago. So glad they released this tune. Number 9 is My Last Breath, which is another song that I think is underrated. It starts with this quiet intro filled with some electronic drumming that kind of makes you think nu metal immediately, and this nice, subtle, clean guitar riff. As Amy sings, there's this slow build that kind of rises all the way up. It takes you to this great chorus, and as usual, there's a very, very strong hook. That should not be a surprise, but what I like about this song is there's a big emphasis on melody, but it feels a lot less nu metal than some of these tracks. It has more of that gothic vibe to it, so I think the electronics are used in a way that most nu metal bands weren't really using. Even at number 8, I love how experimental the track is, and it sounds like a band that already has a very clear identity, yet this was album number 1. Ranked 8th overall is Whisper. This closes out the album on a high note. After a few songs that didn't quite stand out compared to the front half, this album is very, very front-loaded. Starts with this urgent metal-inspired riff and some gothic synthesizers that make things fresh. It's still within their wheelhouse. It doesn't come off as too repetitive because this was a very unique sound to them at the time. And Whisper gets unpredictable. The verse starts and everything gets quiet, and it's Amy Lee kind of whispering, and you don't really know where it's going to go from there until these choruses just explode and Amy sings, "Don't turn away, don't try to hide." Her vocals are soaring over this wall of guitars. It's brilliantly cohesive. Also love to hear that there's a solo in this song. In nu metal in general, we don't get many solos. It's really nice to hear Ben Moody, who is a super underrated guitarist, solo really well. There's also this creepy choir in the outro, and it's a really cool way to end the album. Whisper is no doubt a highlight among the non-singles of Fallen. Haunted is yet another song that I don't really hear people talking about, and I don't understand why. It's definitely the hidden gem of the album. It has so much of the band's identity, but you can hear them pushing boundaries into territory that I'm sure made producers uncomfortable. It's creepy, it's a little spooky, yet it doesn't make you think Halloween. This is very much gothic, and the band is completely in their element in that space. It makes me feel like I'm being watched by a ghost. It has that kind of suspenseful, anxious vibe to it, and I'm all about it. Amy and Ben really come together both on vocals and guitar and just excel. They were such a great match together. It's such a shame that Ben is no longer with the band anymore, because it's tracks like Haunted where if you put this one on any other Evanescence album, it would be a standout track, yet it is only ranked number 7 on Fallen. Turn out the lights, light a candle, and blast this song loudly. In fact, several years ago, I actually ranked these songs, so revisiting my previous rankings, I have had some shifts in my perspective, and then with the 3 unreleased tracks, so a few things have shifted. Imaginary is one of those songs that I absolutely love and had a really hard time ranking it only 6th because it is underrated in every sense of the word. It contains every single quality that makes Evanescence great. Catchy hooks, operatic vocals, crushing guitars, and they all come together in a way that are just perfect. I would even argue that this song has some of Amy Lee's best lyrics. She takes you someplace else. A lot of Evanescence songs are deeply emotional, first person, and they're about your feelings and where you are in life. In Imaginary, she paints an entire landscape of where you are in this lyrical tapestry that is really cool. It's fun. It's a genuine journey she takes you through with lines like, "In my field of paper flowers and candy clouds of lullaby, I lie inside myself for hours and watch my purple sky fly over me." Interesting because in Spirit Box's new EP, she does mention, I don't know if they're purple skies, they might be crimson skies, but either way, just kind of made me think of the Spirit Box writing inspired by Evanescence. This proves that the singles do not mean everything. Listen to Imaginary, go on this trip. It is unlike any new metal or hard rock song that you would hear in the early 2000s. It still stands the test as one of the most unique hard rock songs I've ever heard. Tourniquet ranks number 5, and this one is gut-wrenching. It is tragic, it's dramatic, it's also urgent. It has such an overwhelming amount of feelings in the song. It starts with one of the best guitar riffs on the entire album. I feel like that is way overlooked. In some ways, this track reminds me of Haunted, but it takes things to the next level. This has gone down as one of the most important Evanescence songs ever made. Now, it might have been released as a single at some point, but it's not one of the top ones when you think of what Evanescence has done on the charts. However, it is a complete live staple because of the over-the-top performance by both Amy Lee and the rest of the band. You won't quite hear a song like Tourniquet. It does mix nu metal and goth, which I've mentioned before, but in such a way that it's catchy. Tourniquet manages to be both incredibly sad, but still a head-banging rocker at the same time. Everybody's Fool. This is a song that has no doubt been stuck in your head if you are a millennial or maybe an older Gen Z, because that chorus is just infectious. It gets stuck in there and really digs in. This is one of the 4th singles of Fallen, and it captures the mood and spirit of that nu metal vibe of feeling like an outcast. It's very easy to relate to. It's made for radio, has a strong hook, and I just love that these dark songs by Evanescence also have a lot of pop appeal. This song had no problem being on the radio for some reason back then. Not saying that it would happen now, but it's just amazing how many people vibed with this sort of music. Amy is condemning this external force, which is rare on Fallen. Most of the times these are very internal, reflective songs, but no, she's saying, I know the truth now, I know who you are, and I don't love you anymore. Very on the nose. This one is less poetic, and it doesn't need to be. There's a lot of raw emotion. You can hear Amy really belting these choruses out. It's another song that the band always plays live, always gets a great reaction to, and they deserve it. Going Under, one of my favorite Evanescence songs, is ranked 3rd overall. Yet another song we've probably heard a little too many times, but the reality is this is nu metal at its finest. It's one of the best songs the band has released, one of the best songs of the early 2000s period. Features down-tuned guitars, bouncy riffs, and just that straight up nu metal spirit. And what a way to start the album with Amy Lee whispering, now I will tell you what I've done for you, 50,000 tears I've cried. Shit, what an epic intro. It kind of gives me chills. Even though I've heard the song so many times, it's an absolute showstopper. What I like about this track too is, as emotional as Fallen is, Going Under feels the angriest. I personally love angry songs, and I love the attitude and badass spirit that this whole band is showing. This song will always be a masterpiece. It won the hearts and also trust of so many fans because it's so vulnerable and open. Amy Lee invited the world into her psyche and has kept so many fans for 20 years for that reason. Bring Me to Life. I bet you thought I had this as number 1, but I have it as number 2. It is a phenomenal song. Regardless of what genre you listen to, you probably know this song. It broke pop radio, rock radio, metal radio, all of that, and it rightfully earned it. It is a fun song. It is so memorable. It's unlike any song that we had heard in the past. It features Paul McCoy from 12 Stones, who has those awesome wake me up parts in the choruses that, hey, maybe they weren't that necessary, but it fit that nu metal spirit so well that I love the dynamic between him and Amy Lee. Initially, the band did not want to have a guest singer on it. They were actually told that they would never even be big as a band unless they also had a male singer, and I'm glad they don't have a permanent male singer, but at the same time, I can't deny that Paul's parts in this song are really cool. He's there to compliment Amy Lee, and Amy Lee just takes off on this one. It's a live staple, it's an absolute masterpiece, and it really is one of the best songs released in the 21st century period. Also, let's never forget how epic that breakdown is. That is drama at its finest, with guitars swirling and violins going, and then Amy Lee's voice coming on top. Can't really beat it. Bring Me to Life is Evanescence's best song ever. period. Yet I have it ranked number 2. That is because My Immortal is truly a genre-defying song that is one of the most beautiful pieces of music ever written in our time. My Immortal revealed Amy Lee to the world, and she instantly became one of the most loved and memorable vocalists of her generation. It's a perfectly crafted, heart-wrenching ballad. It's not just her beautiful voice, it's also her piano playing, which is highly underrated, and also complemented with a beautiful string section. In a time where a lot of bands sounded the same, which I personally loved being a new metal fan, this song is just so different. It's such a showstopper. It's so dramatic and deep. This song put this band on the map forever. My Immortal is undeniably authentic, beautiful, and genre transcending, and that's why I have it ranked number 1. It's hard to believe that it's been 20 years since Fallen dropped, and revisiting this album was actually really fun. I will say a lot of these songs that were singles I avoid because I've heard these songs so many times growing up. They're active on rock radio to this day, but it was really cool to hear the deep cuts, hear the non-singles, and take this album for what it is, start to finish, as one body of work. And I will say that this album is not overrated. It is excellent. It's going down as one of the best hard rock albums of the 21st century. I would rank it in any list of top hard rock albums. It is aged very well. It still sounds very modern, even though it's remastered. It's really not that different than the original. Evanescence has a very fresh sound here. Yes, it's new metal. Yeah, they're hard rock, kind of crunchy riffs, but that gothic elements, the string arrangements, and the synths all thrown in create this gothic vibe where it's unlike their peers. Their peers at that time were new metal bands. You had your Limp Bizkits, your Deftones, your System of a Down. All of those bands were great. And what I love about that time is all of them still sounded pretty different. Like Stain sounded nothing like Limp Bizkit, right? Yet Evanescence carved their own way, just like those other bands, and delivered an album that start to finish is excellent. This is not just these singles are awesome, the rest is trash. No, Fallen is one of the best albums of the 21st century, and for that reason, I have scored Fallen a 9.7 out of 10. It is a brilliant album. So glad they released this 20th anniversary edition. The 3 unreleased tracks were actually pretty good. Farther Away I could do without, but Missing You and Breathe No More were really nice additions. I love hearing all of the songs that were in a recording session. I just think there's some magic to that. You can no doubt tell that they were written in those sessions, and I think Breathe No More should have actually been added to the original track list. I want to know your thoughts. Do you even listen to 20th anniversaries of albums anymore? Is this album incredibly overrated? Has it aged well? Has it aged bad? How is my ranking? Let me know in the comments, and please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Stay rockin'.